So this is going to be my first non-scripted video that I've ever done, which I'm a bit nervous about, but I figure I could just leave my microphone running, and then if there's any parts that I don't like, I could just cut it out. This is mostly going to be an explainer as to why I'm not releasing a 200 Days in the Calamity Mod Draedon update. And it mostly comes down to the fact that post-Moonlord in that version of Calamity just felt very messy. And I kind of got burned out by both playing the game and by making that video. I started making that video in mid-December 2021 and didn't release it until mid-March 2022. So it was about 4 months in the making, and the thought of doing another 4 months of making a video, it's a big undertaking, and I am not prepared to do that for that playthrough. Maybe for another playthrough I would do it in the future. I'm not against making a longer video that's with a lot more effort and editing and story built around it than that one, but I think I just kind of gave up on the playthrough. I mean, I completed the gameplay all the way through to the Exomex, and you'll see some of the footage in the background as I'm talking in this video. But it just felt like the difficulty spike was way too high, and it kind of came out of nowhere. There's a definite change between pre-Moonlord and post-Moonlord, and I see a lot of people saying that's intentional, and it might be, but I don't know if that's the right way to go about it. It felt like rather than the difference between pre-hard mode and hard mode, it was the difference between expert and master, or the difference between revengeance and death. And a lot of people might say, well, you should just reduce your difficulty, but if I reduced my difficulty to expert mode, it would feel way too easy. I think that there's not something in between. Like, Calamity adds a lot of features and weapons and items that make expert mode a lot easier than it would be. So you kind of need the revengeance mode changes to make it then as difficult as vanilla expert would be. But I think post-Moonlord, when there isn't anything from vanilla to balance against, Calamity kind of loses its way a bit. So the first main boss post-Moonlord is Providence, and she actually feels kind of balanced, other than for the Guardians phase. There's way too much randomness on the screen, and it doesn't actually add much to the fight other than making it last longer. I feel like since you've defeated the Guardians already in a fight on their own, they could be part of this fight as a very small part more, you get me? Like, they don't need to be so involved in this fight. You could do them one at a time maybe, or just take them out entirely, and I don't feel like the experience would be lost. You kind of go from having maybe 10 attempts on a hard boss pre-Moonlord to having 50 attempts on Providence, which just doesn't feel right. It feels like you've gone up to death mode or malice mode or something that isn't the same vein as the playthrough that you've been doing so far. You also have to fight Providence twice to get enough Divine Geodes to craft armour, which can be a bit of a pain, because that's the first Calamity post-Moonlord armour that you can get. I mean, you've got the Pillars armour from vanilla, but they only last you so long, and Targon armour is definitely quite a big boost in terms of defensive capabilities. Cygnus felt quite easy. I think that boss could definitely use a bit of a buff. And the Ceaseless Void was a really good fight. I actually love the changes that they made in the Draedon update to Ceaseless Void. It made him feel a lot more like an actual boss. It made him feel like he had some character and a bit of lore behind him. But then Stormweaver just, again, felt like it was a bit too random. I mean, the lightning orbs would kind of spawn out of nowhere right in front of you, and then you've got no time to react. So I wasn't a fan of Stormweaver at all, but that was nothing in comparison to the next boss, which was Poltergeist. Yeah, I have very strong feelings about Poltergeist in the Draedon update. This was the update where they added the predictive dash, and the fact that the clone doesn't have a hitbox makes this dash almost impossible to dodge, and it also deals a lot of damage. I know that they've made changes in more previous versions, in more recent versions, should I say, to make the clone have a hitbox, which definitely helps. I haven't actually played those versions, but that was the main issue I saw, was that there was no hitbox. Because if there's a hitbox, then you can just dash into it and use the iframes. But without the hitbox, you had to be perfect with your timing. Like, it came down to milliseconds. Otherwise, you end up taking like a 200-300 damage hit. Next boss in progression was Old Duke. Now, Old Duke felt really good for me. I thought he was quite balanced. I didn't have to try him too many times before I got a successful run. The only painful part was finding the bloodworms, but even that wasn't too bad. Once I got the pattern down, it felt like it was a really fun fight, and you do get a bit of boost with the weapons that he gives against Devourer of Gods. Speaking of Devourer of Gods, I couldn't really fault it. His hits were quite punishing, but they were always easy enough to dodge. I would say that Old Duke and Devourer of Gods both felt like they were in revengeance mode, but perhaps Providence and Poltergeist felt like they weren't. Yaran is the next boss, and I feel like you definitely need to start preparing bigger arenas when it comes to these next few bosses, because the world just isn't high enough from surface level in order to dodge all of Yaran's attacks. You kind of need to dig down into the jungle quite a bit in order to get enough vertical space. So it took quite a while to actually set up the arena, and then the fight itself was also quite difficult. It felt like Yaran managed to get a lot of cheap hits because of a short cooldown between attacks. And there was just a lot of projectiles, and every time you got hit, it was for a lot of damage. I feel like, especially the attack where he spins and releases all the fireballs in a circle, I feel like that could use slightly less projectiles, at least in revengeance mode. There wasn't many openings, and it felt like you kind of had to be quite meticulous with your movement. And I've not got a problem with having to be meticulous, but there's different levels of meticulous, and dodging these just fell off. Now there's two super bosses, and I have very mixed opinions about each of them. Supreme Calamitous I thought was perfect, however I have played the mod before through to Supreme Calamitous, so I definitely have a lot more experience with that fight. I think I ended up taking about 20 attempts, and it felt good. I mean, she spawns an arena that isn't too big. You can just create an easy arena by making a small platform in the sky. It feels like everything's well choreographed. You know what's going to happen once you know the patterns. And overall, it was just a really fun fight, I feel. Which is in stark contrast to the Exo mechs, which instead of having a small arena, make an entire world arena. And I actually had to download an arena which had destroyed the entire world and put platforms every 20 blocks or so in order to make this fight feel right. And even then, it was still a really difficult fight. It felt like there was just a lot going on. And I get that that's kind of the aim of that fight. But I don't really know how to word it. It just felt like there was too much when all three bosses were on screen. The fight doesn't stop at all from start to finish. and that really doesn't help when it comes to resetting your position, because if I was to do this in a normal world, where there's maybe 3 or 4 platforms 20 blocks apart on the surface, if you have to keep moving down, you get to the ground very quick, and then you run out of space. So it just felt like the boss could have been adapted to allow the player to better use space. I don't know. Another part that definitely contributed to me not deciding to make a 200 days video was just the time. It took so much time and effort to make that first 100 days video, and I'm so thankful for the good response that I got on it. It got a lot of views, it got a lot of comments, a lot of likes, a lot of people saying that it was underrated, they thought it should have more views, more likes, and I'm happy for any views, any likes, any comments it gets. I don't have any feeling like it should have done better than it did. You know, I'm still quite a small creator. I'm very happy with where the channel is. And I feel like in order to make more videos and get them out sooner, I have to limit larger projects like the 100 days thing. I just don't have the time for it. I mean, that was taking up most of my free time for about 4 months, and that really does burn you out. I don't think that I'll be undertaking a project as big as that for quite a while. I do have a lot of ideas for other projects in future. I'm actually working on another one just now, but I didn't feel right leaving this one in the dark. So I'm gonna throw together this video and then get it out and then go back to working on that other one, which I'm really excited about, and I can't wait to get the first episode out. Another thing I should mention is the Calamity Daggers Only series. That's probably going to be put on indefinite pause for the moment. I have a lot more gameplay of it. I got through most of the early hard mode bosses, but I mean, Calamity 2.0 came out for 1.4, and it feels a bit odd playing and making a series for 1.3 Terraria at this point. I'd been waiting a long time for Mod Loader to come out for 1.4 because I had a lot of plans that would involve vanilla changes in 1.4, and I feel like those are just a bit more exciting than working on 1.3. You know, things like pylons, the NPC happiness system, block replacement, like these features just make the game so much more fun to play. So I've definitely got a lot more planned for 1.4 in the future. Probably not Calamity for a while, just because, again, I kind of got burned out from the 100 days video, and I think it's good to have a break from it. You know, Calamity is definitely a certain kind of experience that is very different from vanilla, and I think it's good to go back to vanilla every now and again just to get back to that simpler experience. So yeah, if you want to see the videos that I make, then leave a like and subscribe to the channel, all that lovely stuff. But for now, I will see you guys later. Bye.